Well, hello there and welcome back. My name is Stephanie Safarian, and you're listening to episode 583 of Sustainable Minimalists. This is a listener-supported show about intentional and eco-friendly minimalist living. And on today's show, we are discussing ways in which we can set up our homes so that they meet our three core needs. Now, did you know that humans have three core needs? I'm going to be honest, I did not necessarily know that. But my guest today is going to outline what those needs are. And more specifically, he outlines how we can curate our spaces, not so that they're trendy, not so that our houses look like everybody else's, but so that our homes meet our core needs. My guest today is Leidy Klotz, and if you know that name, that's because he's been on the show. It's been a few years, but Leidy was on the show back in 2021. We talked about subtraction. So usually, when we have a problem, we think about what can we add to our lives? What can we buy? What can we bring in? But Leidy's research found that actually sometimes when we have a problem, the best choice is not to add something more. It's to subtract. It's to take away. So I've linked to his original appearance on the show in this week's show notes. But today we are talking about the main points in Leidy's newest book, and it is titled In a Good Place: How the Spaces Where We Live, Work, and Play Can Help Us Thrive. Oh my goodness, Leidy, I am so excited to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk to you as well, Stephanie. I've learned a lot talking to you last time, so I'm sure I'll learn more that I wish I put in the book from having this conversation.
You learned from me. That's not how it works. I learned a lot from you. You were on the show a previous time. We talked about your book, Subtract. Really great stuff in that one. But remind us, I should say, who are you? What do you do? And why did you write another book, In a Good Place?
So my name's Leidy Klotz. I'm a professor at the University of Virginia. I'm also an author. My last book was Subtract. It's about why we don't think about this basic way that we have to make the world a better place, which is to remove from what's already there. And then my next book is called In a Good Place, which is about our relationship with our surroundings. So, how we interact with our homes, for example, and how that relationship meets some basic psychological needs that we have and what we can do about that.
I want to talk to you about those psychological needs because I'll be honest, I didn't know what they are until I read your new book. But I'm just curious if we could take a step back. Why did you seek to cover this topic? It's an interesting one, right? Usually we think that our homes are for shelter and shelter. Yeah.
Keeping your kid moving forward through life. So my background, I'm a civil engineer by training. I've always been interested in the built environment. As I've done more in that area, I get more and more interested in the psychology and how the way that we think, feel, and behave, how that all matters, right? And so that's the angle that I look at the world from. And if I decide to write a book, I think I'm not the guy who takes an idea that people already know about and writes the best book ever about that idea. I'm more like, okay, here's an idea that could be really helpful if people thought about it, and then try to write the first book about that idea. For In a Good Place, it was like, I see that there are some kind of connections going on between, okay, what's going on in our mind and how are we designing our homes, or how are we organizing and arranging our homes? But what are the key factors there, and what should people really be paying attention to? And I think that was my kind of the long-term motivation for going through on a book project. I can write other things that are academic articles, but if I'm writing a book, it's supposed to be something that people can use. And this is something that people don't know about, but I think they can use.
Yeah, I'll be honest, as I was reading your book, I don't want to call it a light bulb moment, but it's something I never thought of, which is I should not be designing my home to have the latest and greatest curtains as per what the home decor catalogs tell me. I should be designing my home so that it meets my core fundamental needs. I mean, how many of us just peruse the catalogs or go to the websites, look at all the latest and greatest stuff, buy it in hopes that our homes are the comfy relaxing retreats that we're looking for, that the catalogs and stores tell us we should have, without really going deeper. And so I really appreciated the fact that the book is organized around our core needs. Now, I'm going to say I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I'm going to pat myself on the back. And yet I did not know about humans' three core needs. So why don't we start with the first one? Pick one. Tell us what it is.
Okay, yeah, let's start with agency. Agency is just this desire to have a say in the world around us. One way that I think about these needs is just like a kid or a grown up playing on the beach in sand, right? And agency is okay, the kid goes to the beach and they can decide where to build the sand castle. They can decide how high to build it. This is a psychological thing. It feels good to do that, but it also, that psychological pull leads to the creation of physical things. So that's agency.
And agency is also when you are decluttering stuff and your spouse gets mad at you, you're infringing on their agency.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
So we want to have control over our spaces, but we also, if we're living with other people, tell me if I'm wrong, we need to respect the other people's agencies. Do I have that right?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're almost like at the tension between in US society, right? It's like but yeah, no, so we want to have agency, we want to respect other people's agency, but I love that example of the decluttering. One thing that psychologists will do is like prescribe somebody to clean up a room if they're really depressed. And it's not because a decluttered room makes you less depressed, it's because the act of seeing that you can interact with your world can be helpful with depression. I'm not a psychologist that's prescribing that for all situations of depression, but that's the power of agency, and that makes people feel good. But I guess it's good, at least if you've got the tension between you and your husband who's disappointed that you're decluttering his stuff, at least you can frame the conversation around agency and decide whose is more important in that situation.
Well, I appreciate there you said you gave the reason why just getting a trash bag and going around the house feels so good in the short term.
Right.
This show is not about putting stuff in a trash bag and sending it to the landfill. And yet acting on that impulse does feel so good. And
Yeah.
according to you, it feels so good because we're getting our agency back.
100%. And if you think about this from an evolutionary perspective, right? Like our ancestors trying to survive in the wild had to feel good for them to try to change their surroundings to be more suitable to them, right? Like they had to be psychologically drawn to providing protection from predators or to providing shelter from the elements. So it would make sense that's still there in us and still feels good. I have a solution for your husband too. So and for your, but I do think that, again, knowing that agency is what matters, there are going to be times when you don't actually have agency. Look, I'm renting. I can't knock down this wall. And that's frustrating. So you realize that your agency is being stifled and now figure out, okay, where's a place where I can go have agency, where I actually can do something. So maybe it's, okay, well, I can't knock down the wall, but I can at least open the window and rearrange the room to face outside or whatever, or rearrange the furniture to face the window or something like that.
Ooh, I like that. All right, we're going to come back to practical ways to re-engage our sense of agency over our surroundings without going to crateandbarrel.com. But let's go back to core need number 2.
Yeah. So that's competence or growth. And if you think about agency as having a say, competence and growth is actually taking advantage of it. So doing it. So if, again, the sandcastle example, the kid building is learning about the material property of sand. They're learning about fluid dynamics, but they're also learning about themselves and their relationship with the world, right? If the castle collapses and they get really disappointed, or if somebody steps in the middle of it and they get frustrated, and then they build it back and develop resilience in that way. So the competence and growth comes from rising to the challenge of interacting with our surroundings.
Can you give us an example to really drill growth and competence down?
Yeah. So think about your first day on vacation in a new place, how you feel out of sorts, or at least I'll give myself as an example. When I go on vacation to a new place, I feel out of sorts and I like to run. So I will go for a run. And by going for a run, I get a little familiar with the place, but I also feel like I'm more comfortable there, right? So I've expanded my comfort zone of the spaces that I feel comfortable in and shown that I can do this very moderately challenging task. I know it's not a huge challenge to enjoy a place that you're on vacation, but then you feel more comfortable and you've grown from like conquering that space. It's also to a larger extent when you go off to college, right? And you figure out how to navigate campus and the dorm room and like the patterns of life. And you're growing through those interactions with your surroundings. And I think that
Yeah.
the challenge becomes that pretty quickly it gets static, right? If we're in the same home for 20 years, you've got to make sure that you're building in those opportunities to grow instead of just relying on them to happen.
So tell me if this is on the right track, and
Okay.
you also please tell me if I'm completely off track. But what I hear you saying is that we human beings, we have been evolutionarily conditioned, let's say, to want to grow, to want to reach new heights. And our
Mhm.
spaces can either facilitate that growth or they can hold us back.
100%. Yes. I would say also it's even more than our spaces are an option. I would say that they were the original option for displaying competence. Like the reason that we have this need to display competence is even other animals. Think of there's bowerbirds will build nests, right? And the male bowerbird will build a ceremonial nest, and then the female bowerbirds will go look at the nest and decide which male to mate with based on which nest they like best. And then the female bowerbird goes and builds a nest to raise and shelter the young. So the whole point of the male built nest is just to show that this bird can effectively move sticks around in the world, right? And so that's competence. It feels good to display competence. And it extends from bowerbirds to humans. It extends for males, females. That's this basic need that we have, and we can satisfy it by interacting with our surroundings, but it also arguably came from interacting with our surroundings. It's like what pulled us to do things with our surroundings to give our species an advantage.
Okay, so I'm going to do something really awkward, which is
Okay.
quote you.
Uh,
It's always interesting when you quote somebody as you're talking to them. But you had a sentence in your book that I wrote down because I loved it. You said, quote, "We live in climate-controlled boxes, slowly losing touch with how to operate them." End quote. Would you say that all the bells and whistles and glitz and glamour of the modern 21st century home and all the systems that are in it and run that we don't know how to use because we're losing self-sufficient skills, would you say that all of that is perhaps pushing us further away from achieving our core need of growth and competency?
yeah, 100%. And but I wouldn't say I want to be practical about it, right? There are some things that are very nice to have. Like for example, it's nice that mold doesn't grow in our houses, right? Because we can, but it's also for me, I get really frustrated if I can't open a window, right? It's like I know that the fresh air is right there and you, the hotel, have sealed this window or this home is making it so that the temperature is automatically going up and I just can't do anything about it. So I think we just need to be really intentional and thoughtful about how we design those systems, but then also how we use them.
All right, your third core need, not our third core need. I believe it's connection. If
Yes.
I have that right, tell me more.
Yeah, connection and belonging. So, I mean, it is what it sounds like, right? We want to be able to connect with other people. Obviously, our surroundings play a huge role in that. And I think this is one that we do think about, right? You think about how people are going to gather when they come into your house, but also just like the cognitive load of the spaces, I think is something that's really important to think of with connecting, right? So if people come into my house and they see shin guards and boxer briefs on the floor, then it's like a thing that they're thinking about that they're not then connecting with me. It's hard to connect with another person. So I think this is a place where kind of minimalism is really helpful, where like a space that isn't requiring a huge cognitive load makes it easier to connect with people. But there's also connection to the space itself. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but just the difference between a house feeling like the house you grew up in feels one way and every other house that's designed exactly that way doesn't feel that way. And it's like you've got a connection to the place that's combined with the people who are in the place and the experiences that you've had, but it's very tied to the place. And so that's like a thing that we can designed for and keep when it's positive.
Yeah. As you're talking there, Lighty, I'm thinking about how as a kid, and not even just as a kid, if I'm going to be completely honest, even now as a 41-year-old, I form deep connections to a place. Like when I leave a Airbnb, let's say after a great week on vacation with my family, I feel the need to say goodbye to it. Like it's very strange. I know it's not completely normal. I think I am having a connection to the space, but more so, it's thanking the space for the connections with my tried and true, my core four, my family, my children, that the space enabled.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
No, it's deep. I do this exercise with my students. Just an icebreaker on the first day of class, and I ask them it's a built environment class, so it's appropriate. But I'm like,
Mhm.
what's your favorite place that you've ever been? And there's 120 students in the class. Collectively have been everywhere, and like their favorite place is always some very personal. I'd say the dominant answer is grandma's house, somewhere at grandma's house. And then it's like the booth at the corner diner that they went to with their high school friends. So
Yeah.
there's a tremendous emotional connection that we can have to places. And not to get too nerdy about it, but like the neuroscience, we have these spatial networks in our brain that we've used to like navigate space forever. And when we started to develop relationships became important with other people, those same networks were adapted to be used. So like spaces and relationships are filed in the same place in our brains. So it would make sense that you could have that big of a reaction to an Airbnb. You should write that on a note, like on the review.
Yeah, all right. I felt a really strange and deep connection with
Yeah,
the four walls.
nobody will ever rent it again.
I know. I'm also, so you mentioned we can design our spaces to meet our need of connection for when we invite people over. And I think a lot of us who like to entertain, we do this. When I was touring the house that I live in now 10 years ago, I was like, oh, this has a great dining room. It has a
Mhm.
big open kitchen, like those types of things. But I also wonder, about home design for connection with the people who live there. So I have almost 12-year-old. She'll be 12 in 2 weeks. And she just wants to go to her room upstairs and slam the door and not connect with me at all. And that's totally normal and totally developmentally appropriate. But I'm wondering if there are some design hacks, tricks
Yeah.
that facilitate connection between the people who live there. And I ask that
Mhm.
because if my daughter had her way, she would be in her room on technology, chit-chatting with her friends all day long, and she would never see me.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's complicated once if each person's different, each situation's different. But a couple things. My son's 11 and he still wants to be around me, and I'm just so thankful.
Aw.
But I'm also just every day that it's like that, I'm like, all right, just embrace this because it's gonna change so quickly. But I think maybe like giving agency, right? Is she able to have a say in kind of the spaces where you want her to be or where there would be more connection? And I know, again, this is not a silver bullet that's going to solve all your problems, but like we have wood stairs that are pretty steep in the house and we needed to put up for the grandparents to go up and down, needed to put carpet on the wood stairs. And so it was just a simple matter of sticking these carpet tiles on. But I
Yeah.
let him pick them out and then I had him help me put them down. And now he's like more bought into that space. So he feels more ownership over that common space. So if there are ways to help her feel more agency in the spaces where she'd actually interact with you, I think that's good. I would also
Mhm.
say with the connection, the author of The Anxious Generation, which is about screens, they have a book called The Amazing Generation, which is like for tweens. And it's a graphic novel that's resonated with my son. And it's all about, okay, what are the screens doing to your brain? But one of the suggestions that they had, and I can't remember if it was in the book or on a podcast or something, was like have one room be screen free. And I was like, that's a horrible suggestion. It should be have one room that has all the screens, right?
Mm.
And so I think there's like an element of subtraction too, because the screens can do tons of amazing things. And like our ability to talk now and me connect with your audience, that's remarkable. And that's being facilitated by these technologies. So I don't want to say that there's tremendous value, but they can't do the things that our spaces do, right? They're not three-dimensional. They don't allow you to interact with people in the same way that you would if you were in the same places. So maybe getting the distractions out of there so that it was more appealing. Yeah.
Those are great suggestions. Going back to the first one where you said,
Yeah.
give my daughter some agency over the spaces that are not her room, hits hard because I do tend to be the one who controls the whole house. And historically I've said I'm the one who's cleaning it. Like I'm the one who's maintaining this space so that we can connect and so that we can grow and display competency. So don't I get the lion's share of the say? But what
Mhm.
I hear you saying is I can let my kid pick out the floor tiles
Yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
or I can let her stuff hang out on the coffee table a little longer. Because then I would be respecting her core need of agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just helping her with the same things, the same patterns that we fall into, which is like we just tend to muddle through our lives in the same patterns as usual, right? So it's I'm going to do my homework here and I just always do my homework here. And if you can help her see, okay, hey, would you ever want to do homework at the kitchen table or would you ever want to watch the TV down here instead of up in your room or whatever? Just helping her see that I think there's a lot of opportunities all of us have to move among the spaces to which we have access. And if we can help our kids see that, you're giving them a skill that will help you connect with them now, but also just expand their horizons in the future too.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm just taking another step back and thinking about how novel really this is. Thinking about our homes in a way that prioritizes our core needs. Like, who does that? Maybe you do because you wrote this book, but the
Oh,
rest of
no, it's
us,
hard. It's not my first instinct either, but yeah.
yeah, the rest of us are designing our homes and buying stuff for our homes and living in our homes, frankly, in ways that number one, we see other people doing it. And number two, in ways that we think are going to impress other people. And if we bring it back to those core needs, I think that a lot of us do this, number one, because we were marketed all these things and we've
100%.
been conditioned to buy stuff since birth. And so everybody else is doing it. So let's do it as well. But I think another part here is we're trying to be like everybody else for the connection piece, right? Because we want to be part of the herd
That's true.
evolutionarily.
Yeah.
How do we determine the difference? How can we spot the difference between a trend versus true connection? Because there is a difference, but amidst this loneliness epidemic, I
Yeah.
wonder if we're confusing keeping up with the Joneses with true, authentic connection.
Yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of these things that are trends, they make you feel good in the near term, and then that good feeling diminishes. And I think if you get it right, the good feeling should stay the same or even get better. So it's if you think about just buying the new backsplash that's in style, right? And okay, that's cool. It looks good. Maybe the neighbors come over and are impressed. And every time you go in the kitchen, you're like, oh, that's great. I feel more comfortable in this kitchen. But then slowly but surely, that like novelty piece erodes and it's just back to normal. And the only way to get that feeling again is to buy another thing. So that's like this feeling of novelty versus a true feeling of actually agency and competence and the connection. So I guess that would be one way to after you've made the decisions, is it making you feel better? Is that good feeling diminishing or is it like increasing? Some of these things it's pretty easy to figure out. I mean, like the most of the advertisements for the things that they want us to buy are like tapping into you just need this because it's new. They're not even claiming that this is going to make you feel make you grow or make you feel competent. And so I think when you're making the initial decisions, we can be like, does this seem like am I doing this because of it's meeting these core needs or am I doing it because it's for some other reason that's not as important. And those reasons
Yeah.
are important once you've met your core needs. It's just the core needs should be prioritized.
Well, to that point, your book makes a point, which almost even underlies the need of meeting our core needs. And that point, of course, is that we need to be present in our homes. We need
Mhm.
to be fully there. We need to not be in our heads thinking about our to-do lists and all of our stresses and all of our woes. We actually need to be present in our spaces, yes, but in our lives. And So I've lived in my house now for 10 years, a decade. Where did that decade go? I have no idea. But I feel like I don't even see my space anymore. I think this is called habituation. Like I walk
Yeah.
past the same trinkets, the same artwork, the same paint that is woefully out of style. I don't
Mhm.
even see it anymore. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about the importance of being present, but also how to work, how to counteract, I should say, habituation.
Yeah, that's great. And where did the 10 years go? You've got a 12-year-old, so
It's
that's
true.
really you've got something to show for it. Yeah, habituation is one of these things that's great for a lot of reasons, right? You wouldn't wanna have to, every time you walk by your baseboard, scrutinize the design of the molding and the paint color. This is our natural tendency to filter out things that aren't consequential, but the way it works in our spaces is then we stop appreciating things that might bring us joy or things that could be annoying us. And so there's classic examples of, if you spend all day in a room with an off-gassing carpet that's putting VOCs into the air, even if you don't smell the VOCs, you have a headache at the end of the day. So these things that we don't notice can affect us negatively and they can affect us positively. And so it becomes more important to just take a beat. I've got one thing I talk about in the book is this idea of space before screen, just acknowledging that we look at our screen so much, just use the screen as a cue to say, have I actually paid attention to this space I'm in and taken stock of what there is that's beautiful about it, or what opportunities are here, or things that I don't like that I would want to change. But then also our dominant sense is sight, right? So much of what we've been talking about is how things look, but so much of what a space does for you is related to the other senses. So smell and touch and sound. So closing your eyes in a space. I have a realtor friend who, when she shows a house, she will close her eyes, and it just allows her to tap into those other senses more closely. But we can all do that in the spaces that we're in. And it's a way of like slowing us down and understanding the spaces better, which then allows us to make more thoughtful decisions about how we're living in them and what we're doing with them.
Yeah, I like that. And to that point, I'm thinking about so this show has been around for almost 10 years as well. And it started as a show about decluttering and clutter and the stress that clutter brings. But
Hmm.
as I talked to you, Leidy, first of all, the show has morphed since then. Listeners, surprise if you haven't noticed. We don't talk about clutter much anymore, but I'm thinking about clutter through the lens of our core needs. And it seems like clutter impedes or detracts from our attainment of our core needs. It's a distraction at the end of the day. Not only does it make us not present in our spaces, but it robs us of our agency. It hinders connection, and I don't know what it
That's
does to growth, but it makes us not be able to grow when we're too busy managing the clutter.
Yeah, it forces you to focus on insignificant things. I would say, and it's like a visible reminder of your inability to have control over that space. It's this, oh man, it's just out of my control. I can't do anything about this. It's just, it keeps growing. So yeah,
So, to that point, then, I can't let you go without asking you what your best tips are for designing and enjoying our homes in ways that meet our core needs.
I mean, the first one is straightforward, but still worth saying, I think, is when we are running our choices through these filters, right? So thinking about agency, competence, and connection first when we're making decisions about the house to buy, the neighborhood to live in, but then also how you use the house that you have, right? And starting there before you get to paint colors is, I think, incredibly important. And I think we've seen that in the conversation, right? The conversation that we've had about our spaces is totally different than it would be if it was just like, how do we renovate this home to make it look cool? So just taking that step back and looking at those things is a really important tip.
Okay. I used to love HGTV. Love
Yes.
it. I watched all the shows.
I love it
And
too. I mean, that, speaking of Airbnbs, right? Because I don't have cable anymore, but whenever you go
Say-
rent a place, it's just, oh, I forgot about these shows. But I think like part of the popularity of those shows is this like basic evolutionary appeal of doing stuff to our environment. It's, you're watching those and you're getting this little hit of like growth and agency and competence, even though you're not actually doing it. anyway.
Yeah, taking a sledgehammer and knocking down all the walls for the
Right.
open floor plan
Yeah.
is really hitting on some core needs. But like, we can't, there comes a point where we knock down too many walls and there's
Yeah.
no more walls to knock down, or even decluttering. Like, it feels good to throw everything into a trash bag and just feel agency coursing through your veins. But there comes a point where we have decluttered too much. And so I guess the fundamental question here is, how can we create our spaces for the long haul to meet
Mhm.
those needs so that we're not doing these knee jerk, gigantic, over the top reactions of knocking down walls or filling up trash bags or putting our house on the market or doing these things that are big and bombastic but don't have lasting effect?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and this is especially true for competence and growth, right? Because it requires new challenges that we can meet, and spaces tend to be static. And it's easy, then it's okay, what's the new challenge once I've mastered this thing? But I think if we can think about our spaces and our homes more as like evolving, right? And they evolve with the seasons depending on where you live, right? You're going to use your home in a totally different, you could use your home in a totally different way with the seasons. And that's an opportunity to try new things. And when you undertake a renovation or even when you undertake a decluttering, you're still just thinking about it as, okay, this is a step in the process that's never going to end of me having a relationship with this space. And so that's mostly a mindset shift, but I do think it helps us then g- avoid getting stuck in those ruts of, okay, we're not growing with the space. Then the last piece I do think is expanding your territory, right? Once you've mastered your home, it's not like you need to buy another home, but there's probably areas in your neighborhood that you haven't explored, right? And you can get the growth from those things. You can also grow, I think, just in your kind of understanding of how the space works and how the materials are. And so I think there are a lot of ways to do it, and it's resisting this false impression that just because it's a fixed built environment that it's not changing. The environment might not change, but your relationship with it will. Also, you're going to change, and maybe it's more acute in kids, right? But now you're facing this new challenge in your house where your 12-year-old wants to isolate themselves in the room, which is completely opposite from how it was maybe 3 years ago, where all they wanted to do was be right next to you. And so it's okay, now, okay, another spatial challenge. How do I take it on and solve it and feel competent from doing so?
Yeah. And I'll just take that one step further and say our commercialized culture wants us to solve X, Y, and Z problem by buying a new thing for the house. But I think we've really nailed down today that buying the new thing creates the clutter, and clutter almost always impedes us from obtaining our core needs. And the core needs go deeper than a simple product, I think, is what I hear you saying today. If there was a product that satisfied all our core needs forever, certainly let me know what it is. But the buying of the things is way more superficial.
Yeah, and it almost works against it, right? Because if you buy something, you didn't solve your problem, you didn't show competence, you just bought it, and hopefully the thing solved.
Mm.
I know some things you can buy and then you figure out how to install them and that feels good and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think the buying even works against it. It's like you're even more helpless because you're dependent on Home Depot to have this product and you to buy it. That's the only way you can feel comfortable in your house. And that's not a good way to feel.
Okay, I have so much to think about. And I
Can I
thank
come
you.
back? I was thinking about your daughter before we end. I do think that letting her have her bedroom is a good way to help grow her agency. I think, like little kids learn to set boundaries, right? That's an important part in their development. And so certainly anyone who's got a 12-year-old who is going up to their room, like you said, that's developmentally appropriate in a lot of ways.
It is. It
And
is.
you're good for letting her do it.
Well, my husband, he wants to like take the door off, but I'm going to say to him, no,
Also.
husband, we need to let her have her agency. We need to let her have her space. And so leave that door on. But Lidy, what a conversation. I want you to tell us where we can find you online. That's number
Mhm.
one. I also want to know where we can find your new book. It comes out April 28th. It is titled In a Good Place: How the Spaces Where We Live, Work, and Play Can Help Us Thrive. Give us all the Lidy details.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy the book anywhere books are sold. Support your local bookstores or independent booksellers if you can, but you can get it anywhere. And my parents gave me a good Google name, so just leidyklots.com, leidyklots.com, how you can find me.
When did they buy that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, they were very forward thinking. 1978, a long time ago.
Leidy, when you write your fourth book, please promise to come back. I always learn so much from you. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Stephanie. This is always fun.
Listeners, that's a wrap. My friends, show notes are at mamaminimalist.com/584. Now, quick reminder for book club, we're meeting on April 27th. We are reading the book Start in Your Own Backyard by Steve Nygren. Steve will be joining us for the second half of book club, so be there or be square and bring your questions for Steve. So read the book. You know, when you're reading a book and you have questions for the author, you get to bring your questions and ask the author. So write down your questions and come to book club ready to go. Until then, you can always reach out if you need me. My contact info is in the show notes. Thanks for being here. Thanks so much for being here. And take care.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.